The sun was setting over Lakeview High School, casting long shadows across the empty hallways. Inside room 204, however, the atmosphere buzzed with energy. The advanced xenobiology class had just begun, and 30 students sat at their desks, notebooks open and pens poised. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood at the front of the room, her dark hair tied neatly into a bun. She smiled warmly at her students, but there was something different about her today, a glint of excitement in her eyes. "Today," she began, adjusting the small microphone pinned to her collar, "we have a very special guest joining us from light years away." She gestured toward the large holographic projector in the corner of the classroom. With a soft hum, the device flickered to life, filling the air with shimmering blue light. Slowly, an image took shape, a towering figure with sleek silver skin that reflected the dim glow of the classroom lights. Its elongated limbs ended in sharp claws, and its wide, unblinking eyes seemed to pierce through every student in the room. "This is Ambassador Krillax," Dr. Vasquez continued, her voice steady despite the alien's intimidating presence. "He represents the Zorathian Empire, one of the most advanced civilizations in the known galaxy." Krillax tilted his head slightly, studying the humans before him as if they were insects under a microscope. His lips curled into what might have been a smile or perhaps a sneer. "Greetings, primitive beings," he said, his deep voice resonating like rolling thunder. "I am here to share knowledge of my people's achievements, and to assess your species' worth." A murmur rippled through the classroom. Some students exchanged nervous glances, while others leaned forward eagerly, fascinated by the sight of an actual extraterrestrial visitor. Mia Alvarez, seated near the back of the room, felt her stomach tighten. She wasn't sure why, but something about this alien made her uneasy. Maybe it was the way he spoke so casually about humanity being primitive, or the cold detachment in his glowing eyes. Dr. Vasquez ignored the tension in the air and pressed on. "Ambassador Krillax has graciously agreed to conduct a demonstration for us, an immersive simulation, designed to illustrate how interstellar conflicts are resolved." She paused, then added with forced cheerfulness, "It'll be educational." The word simulation caught Mia's attention. She'd read enough science fiction novels to know that simulations could range from harmless virtual reality games to full-blown psychological experiments. Judging by Krillax's smug expression, she suspected this wouldn't end well. Without warning, the classroom lights dimmed further, plunging the room into near darkness. A low whirring sound filled the air as thin cables snaked out from the walls, connecting themselves to ports embedded in each desk. Before anyone could protest, the cables emitted a faint pulse of light, and suddenly, the world around them dissolved. Mia blinked, disoriented, as the familiar surroundings of room 204 vanished. When her vision cleared, she found herself standing on a barren landscape, littered with smoking craters and twisted metal wreckage. The sky above churned with angry clouds, streaked with flashes of crimson lightning. Around her, her classmates materialized one by one, looking equally bewildered. "What the hell is going on?" Marcus Johnson shouted, gripping his arm as though trying to anchor himself to reality. He was the star quarterback of the football team, all muscle and bravado, but even he looked shaken. Before anyone could answer, a deafening roar echoed across the battlefield. From the horizon emerged a fleet of sleek, insect-like ships, descending rapidly toward the ground. Beams of green energy lanced down, striking the earth with explosive force. Students screamed and scattered, diving for cover behind jagged rocks and charred debris. Mia dropped to her knees, heart pounding. This wasn't just a simulation, it felt horrifyingly real. Every detail, the heat of the explosions, the acrid smell of burning metal, the weight of fear pressing down on her chest, was vivid and visceral. She glanced around frantically, searching for some kind of pattern, some clue that might help them survive. That's when she noticed something odd. The attacks weren't random. Each blast landed in precise intervals, targeting specific areas of the battlefield. It was almost predictable. Her mind raced. If the enemy followed a pattern, maybe she could anticipate their next move. Grabbing a shard of broken metal, she sketched a rough map in the dirt, marking where the blasts had hit so far. As more explosions rocked the ground, she updated the diagram, connecting the dots until a clear sequence emerged. "Mia!" Lily Chung called out, crawling toward her. Lily was the artistic type, always sketching in her notebook during lectures, but now her face was streaked with dirt and panic. "What are you doing? We need to get out of here." "Just wait," Mia replied, her voice firm despite the chaos around them. "I think I can figure this out." Lily hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. Together, they huddled behind a large boulder, watching as another wave of ships descended. Sure enough, the blast followed the exact pattern Mia had predicted. When the dust settled, she pointed to a spot several meters away. "There. That's where they'll strike next." Sure enough, seconds later, the ground erupted in flames exactly where she'd indicated. The realization sent a jolt of adrenaline through her veins. They weren't completely helpless, not yet. Word spread quickly among the students. Those who hadn't already fled regrouped around Mia, eager for guidance. Raj Patel, the tech whiz of the class, adjusted his glasses nervously. "Okay, so we know where they're hitting. But how do we fight back?" "We don't," Mia said sharply. "Not directly. These things are too powerful. We need to work smarter, not harder." She explained her plan. Divide into teams based on their strengths. Raj and a few others would focus on finding weaknesses in the enemy's technology. Athletes like Marcus would act as shields, protecting the weaker members of the group. Creative thinkers like Lily would brainstorm unconventional strategies. And Mia herself would keep analyzing the patterns, directing everyone's movements. For the first time since the simulation began, a spark of hope ignited among the students. Even Marcus, who had initially scoffed at the idea of taking orders from a quiet girl like Mia, nodded in agreement. "All right," he said gruffly. "Let's do this." As the next wave of attacks approached, the students sprang into action. Working together, they managed to avoid the worst of the destruction, carving out pockets of safety amidst the chaos. For a moment, it almost felt like they were gaining the upper hand. But then, everything changed. From the sky descended a new threat. Krillax himself, stepping out of a shimmering portal of light. Towering above the battlefield, he surveyed the scene with obvious disdain. "Impressive," he sneered, his voice cutting through the din of explosions. "You primitives have lasted longer than expected. But let us see how you fare against me personally." With a flick of his clawed hand, he unleashed a devastating wave of energy, scattering the students like leaves in a storm. Mia stumbled backward, pain shooting through her side as she hit the ground hard. Through blurred vision, she saw her classmates struggling to rise, their earlier confidence crumbling in the face of this overwhelming adversary. Krillax loomed closer, his glowing eyes locking onto hers. "Your petty tricks mean nothing," he growled. "Surrender now, and I may spare your lives." For a heartbeat, Mia froze, terror gripping her throat. Then, slowly, she pushed herself to her feet. Her legs trembled, but her voice rang out clear and defiant. "We're not giving up," she said, meeting his gaze without flinching. "Not to you. Not to anyone." Around her, the other students rose as well, forming a ragged line beside her. Though battered and bruised, they stood tall, united in their refusal to yield. For the first time, Krillax's confident smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. And in that moment, Mia knew they still had a chance. Krillax stared down at the line of students, his glowing eyes narrowing with irritation. He had expected them to crumble under his presence, to drop to their knees and beg for mercy. Instead, they stood firm, their faces streaked with dirt and sweat, but their spirits unbroken. It was infuriating. How could these fragile creatures, barely more than children, defy him so brazenly? "You think your defiance means something?" Krillax sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "Your resistance is meaningless. I am superior in every way: strength, intellect, power. You cannot win." Mia clenched her fists, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew he was right about one thing. They couldn't match him head-on. Krillax was a towering figure of alien might, his very presence radiating an aura of dominance. But Mia also knew that brute force wasn't the only path to victory. There were other ways to fight, ways that relied on creativity, teamwork, and sheer determination. "Maybe we can't beat you with strength," she said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "But we're not going down without a fight." Her words seemed to ripple through the group, reigniting their resolve. Marcus Johnson, the football star who had initially doubted Mia's leadership, stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. "Yeah," he growled, glaring up at the alien. "You want us? Come and get us." Krillax let out a low, guttural laugh. "Foolish humans. Very well. If you wish to test your limits, then I will oblige." With a wave of his clawed hand, Krillax unleashed another barrage of energy blasts. The ground shook violently as the attacks tore through the battlefield, sending debris flying in all directions. The students scattered, diving for cover behind rocks and ruined structures. But this time, they didn't panic. They moved with purpose, sticking to the plan Mia had laid out earlier. Raj Patel crouched behind a jagged piece of metal, his fingers flying over a makeshift control panel he'd salvaged from the wreckage. His mind raced as he analyzed the data streaming across the screen. "Guys," he shouted over the din of explosions, "I think I found something. These drones, they're linked to a central command system. If we can disrupt it, we might be able to disable some of their weapons." "How do we do that?" Lily Chun asked, peeking out from behind a crumbling wall. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was calm. "We need to get closer to those ships," Raj replied, pointing toward the swarm of insect-like vessels hovering overhead. "There's got to be a weak point somewhere. Maybe a vent or a power core we can target." Mia nodded, quickly relaying the information to the others. "Marcus, take a few people and create a diversion. Draw their fire away from us. Raj, Lily, and I will try to sneak in and find that weak point." Marcus grinned, cracking his neck. "Finally, something I'm good at." He turned to a small group of athletes and barked orders, rallying them into position. Together, they charged out into the open, shouting and waving their arms to draw the attention of the enemy drones. Green beams of energy sizzled past them, narrowly missing their heads, but they kept moving, zigzagging unpredictably to make themselves harder targets. Meanwhile, Mia led Raj and Lily toward the nearest ship, using the chaos caused by Marcus's team as cover. The vessel loomed above them, its sleek metallic surface gleaming ominously in the crimson light of the sky. As they approached, Raj spotted a narrow opening near the base, a maintenance hatch, perhaps. "That's our way in," he whispered excitedly. The trio ducked inside, finding themselves in a cramped corridor lit by pulsating blue lights. The air hummed with energy, and strange symbols flickered along the walls. Raj immediately set to work, examining the controls, while Mia and Lily kept watch. "This is insane," Lily muttered, clutching a shard of metal like a weapon. "What if someone or something comes after us?" "We'll deal with it," Mia said firmly. "Just stay focused." After a few tense minutes, Raj let out a triumphant shout. "Got it. I've overridden the targeting system. Those drones won't know where to aim anymore." He tapped a final sequence into the console, and the ship shuddered violently as its systems went haywire. Outside, the once precise attacks became erratic, giving the rest of the students a fighting chance. Back on the battlefield, Marcus and his team continued their relentless assault, hurling rocks and debris at the confused drones. One by one, the machines faltered and crashed to the ground, their circuits fried by Raj's hack. Cheers erupted from the students as they realized they were gaining the upper hand. But Krillax wasn't done yet. Watching from afar, he seethed with rage. These humans were proving far more resourceful than he had anticipated. It was unacceptable. With a roar of fury, he raised both arms, summoning a massive wave of energy that surged across the battlefield. The impact sent everyone sprawling, their makeshift defenses crumbling under the sheer force of his attack. When the dust settled, the students struggled to their feet, battered but still standing. Krillax strode toward them, his claws glinting menacingly in the dim light. "Enough games," he snarled. "You have shown courage, I admit. But courage alone cannot save you. Surrender now, or face annihilation." For a moment, doubt crept into the hearts of the students. They were exhausted, injured, and outnumbered. Could they really keep going against such overwhelming odds? Even Mia hesitated, her mind racing for another solution. Then she remembered something, the map she had drawn earlier, the one that revealed the patterns in the enemy's attacks. If she could predict Krillax's next move, maybe she could turn the tables on him. Taking a deep breath, Mia stepped forward, meeting the alien's gaze head-on. "You say we're weak," she said, her voice ringing with quiet defiance. "But what does it say about you, Krillax? Why are you so scared of us? Why do you need to crush us just to prove your superiority?" Krillax froze, his expression darkening. For the first time, there was a flicker of uncertainty in his glowing eyes. "Scared?" He spat. "I fear nothing. Least of all you. Then why are you trying so hard to break us?" Mia pressed, her words cutting deeper with each syllable. "If you're so confident, why not let us go? Or are you afraid that if you don't destroy us now, we'll rise up and challenge you later?" The alien's lip curled into a snarl, but he didn't respond immediately. Mia seized the opportunity, turning to her classmates. "He's bluffing," she said loudly. "He knows we're stronger than he thought. That's why he's desperate to stop us." Her words ignited a spark among the students. One by one, they rose to their feet, forming a solid wall of determination. Even those who had been on the verge of giving up found new strength in their unity. They locked eyes with Krillax, refusing to back down. For a long moment, silence hung heavy in the air. Then, with a growl of frustration, Krillax raised his hand again. But before he could unleash another attack, Mia shouted, "Now!" On cue, Marcus and his team launched a coordinated counterattack, pelting the alien with whatever they could grab: rocks, shards of metal, even clumps of dirt. While Krillax swatted at the projectiles, distracted by the sudden onslaught, Raj activated a second override sequence he had prepared earlier. The remaining drones sputtered and died, leaving the battlefield eerily quiet. Krillax roared in outrage, his composure finally cracking. "You dare," he began, but Mia cut him off. "Yes, we dare," she said, stepping closer. "Because we're human. And no matter how many times you knock us down, we'll always stand back up." The alien stared at her, his glowing eyes wide with disbelief. For the first time in centuries, Krillax felt something he hadn't expected: doubt. These humans weren't just surviving, they were thriving. Against all odds, they had turned his own arrogance into their greatest weapon. And in that moment, Mia knew they had won, not just the battle, but something far more important: respect. The battlefield was eerily quiet now, the hum of Krillax's drone silenced and the crimson lightning above fading into a dull glow. The students stood in a loose circle around the alien ambassador, their chests heaving with exhaustion, but their eyes sharp with defiance. Krillax glared at them, his claws twitching as if itching to strike. But for the first time, he hesitated. The humans had pushed back harder than he ever imagined possible, and it unnerved him. Mia stepped forward again, her voice steady despite the fatigue weighing down her limbs. "You came here to teach us a lesson," she said, her words cutting through the tense air like a blade. "But maybe you're the one who needs to learn something. You think your technology and power make you better than us. But what good is all that if you can't handle a group of kids working together?" Krillax's glowing eyes narrowed dangerously. "Do not mistake my restraint for weakness," he growled, his deep voice vibrating through the ground beneath their feet. "I could end this farce with a single gesture." "Then why haven't you?" Mia shot back, her voice rising slightly. "Because deep down, you know we're not just some helpless primitives. We figured out your patterns, hacked your systems, and fought back every time you tried to crush us. If you were really as superior as you claim, none of this would have happened." A murmur of agreement rippled through the students. Even Marcus, who usually preferred action over words, nodded firmly. For once, they weren't just a random collection of teenagers. They were a team, united by a shared purpose. Krillax clenched his fists, his frustration boiling over. "Enough!" he bellowed, raising one clawed hand high above his head. A surge of energy crackled around him, pulsing outward in a visible wave. The students braced themselves, expecting another devastating attack, but instead, the alien froze mid-motion, his expression shifting from anger to confusion. "What is this?" Krillax muttered, staring at his trembling hands. The energy surrounding him flickered and dimmed, as though something was interfering with his powers. Raj Patel emerged from behind a pile of rubble, holding up a small device he'd been tinkering with during the chaos. His glasses were askew, and his shirt was torn, but there was a triumphant grin on his face. "It's called an EMP emitter," he explained, his voice tinged with pride. "Short for electromagnetic pulse. I rigged it using parts from those drones you sent after us. It disrupts electronic systems and, apparently, alien biology too." "You did what?" Lily Chun gasped, her eyes wide with disbelief. She had no idea Raj had been working on something so bold while everyone else was busy dodging explosions. "It was Mia's idea," Raj admitted, glancing at her. "She told me earlier to look for weaknesses in their tech. So I figured, why not try disabling the source of their power altogether?" Krillax staggered backward, visibly weakened by the effects of the EMP. His once smooth movements were now jerky and uncoordinated, and his glowing eyes dimmed to a faint amber hue. He let out a low growl, more animalistic than before. "This changes nothing," he spat, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. "Even without my abilities, I am still faster, stronger, smarter?" Mia interrupted, taking another step closer. Her heart raced, but she forced herself to keep calm. "Maybe, but you're forgetting one thing. We don't fight fair." Before Krillax could react, Marcus lunged forward, tackling the alien to the ground with all the force of a linebacker charging through the football field. The impact sent shockwaves rippling across the battlefield, knocking several students off their feet. Krillax roared in fury, thrashing wildly as Marcus pinned him down with sheer brute strength. "Someone grab his arms!" Marcus shouted, struggling to hold the alien in place. Two other students rushed to help, grabbing Krillax's wrists and pulling them behind his back. Despite his size and strength, the alien was immobilized for now. Mia exhaled sharply, relief washing over her. They had done it. Against all odds, they had captured the mighty Krillax. But she knew this wasn't the end. "Not yet. We need to find the control node," she said quickly, turning to Raj. "The thing keeping this simulation running. If we destroy it, we can shut everything down, including him." Raj nodded, already scanning the area with his makeshift scanner. "Got it," he said after a moment, pointing toward a massive structure in the distance. It looked like a twisted tower made of black metal, its surface covered in glowing runes that pulsed rhythmically. "That's gotta be it. Let's move." The group set off at a run, leaving Krillax writhing on the ground under the watchful eyes of Marcus and a few others. The journey to the tower was fraught with danger. The terrain was uneven, littered with jagged rocks and smoldering craters. Every step felt heavier than the last, their bodies aching from hours of relentless fighting. But they pressed on, driven by sheer determination. As they approached the base of the tower, a new challenge awaited them, a swarm of smaller drones, buzzing angrily like mechanical hornets. These ones seemed unaffected by the EMP, their red eyes locking onto the students with predatory focus. "Take cover," Mia yelled, diving behind a chunk of debris as the drones unleashed a hail of energy blasts. The rest of the group followed suit, scrambling for shelter as the attacks rained down around them. Lily peeked out cautiously, clutching a shard of metal like a weapon. "We can't stay here forever," she shouted over the din. "They'll overwhelm us." "We don't need to fight them directly," Mia replied, her mind racing. She glanced at the tower, then at the drones circling overhead. An idea began to form. "Raj, do you still have any EMP charges left?" Raj patted his pockets frantically before pulling out a small cylinder. "One," he confirmed. "But it won't take out all of them." "It doesn't have to," Mia said, a spark of inspiration lighting up her face. "Just aim for the tower. If we disable it, the drones will lose their connection to the system." Raj hesitated, then nodded. "All right. But someone's gonna have to distract them while I get close enough to plant the charge." "I'll do it," Marcus volunteered, stepping forward. His muscles tensed as he prepared to spring into action. "Just give me a signal, and I'll draw their fire." Mia gave him a quick nod, then turned to the others. "Everyone else, stay low and ready to move. Once Raj sets off the EMP, we make a break for the tower." With a deep breath, Marcus charged out into the open, shouting and waving his arms to grab the attention of the drones. The machines immediately turned their focus on him, unleashing a barrage of energy blasts that narrowly missed his head. He zigzagged wildly, leading the swarm away from Raj as the tech-savvy student sprinted toward the base of the tower. "Hurry, Raj!" Mia called out, watching anxiously as the drones closed in on Marcus. The football star was fast, but even he couldn't dodge forever. Finally, Raj reached the tower and planted the EMP charge against its metallic surface. "Done!" he shouted, pressing the activation button. A blinding flash of light erupted from the device, sending a shock wave rippling through the air. The drone sputtered and fell silent, crashing to the ground in heaps of useless machinery. The students cheered, their voices echoing across the battlefield. But Mia didn't join in. Her eyes were fixed on the tower, which had begun to shudder violently. Cracks spread across its surface, glowing brighter with each passing second. "Everyone, fall back," she ordered, her voice urgent. "It's going to blow." The group scrambled backward as the tower emitted a deafening groan, its runes flaring with intense light. Then, with a final burst of energy, the structure exploded, sending shards of metal flying in all corners. The shock wave knocked everyone off their feet, but when the dust settled, the battlefield was eerily still, and just like that, the simulation collapsed back in room 204. The students blinked in confusion as the holographic projector sputtered and died. The classroom lights flickered back on, revealing the familiar rows of desks and chairs. For a long moment, no one spoke. They simply stared at each other, their faces streaked with dirt and sweat, their bodies aching from the ordeal they had just endured. Dr. Vasquez broke the silence, her voice trembling slightly. Are you all okay? Mia nodded slowly, her mind still reeling from everything that had happened. It felt surreal to be back in the real world after such an intense experience. But one thing was certain. They had faced the impossible and won. On the screen where Krillex had appeared earlier, the alien's image flickered back to life. His silver skin was duller now, his posture slumped in defeat. For once, there was no arrogance in his glowing eyes, only resignation. You humans, he began, his voice quieter than before. Perhaps I underestimated you. Perhaps there is more to your species than I realized. With that, the transmission cut off, leaving the room in stunned silence. The students exchanged glances, unsure whether to laugh, cry, or cheer. In the end, they settled for a mix of all three, their laughter filling the classroom like music. They had stood up to an alien menace and proved, once and for all, that humanity was anything but primitive. The classroom was silent for a moment, the kind of silence that comes after a storm has passed. The students sat in their seats, their breathing still heavy, their clothes dirty and torn from the simulation. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood at the front of the room, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Her eyes scanned the faces of her students, searching for any sign of lasting harm. But what she saw instead surprised her. There was no fear in their eyes anymore, only determination, pride, and a newfound sense of strength. On the holographic screen, Krillax's image flickered once more before stabilizing. His usual smug expression was gone, replaced by something closer to discomfort. For the first time since his arrival, he looked unsure of himself. This demonstration, he began, his deep voice quieter now, almost hesitant, was intended to showcase the futility of resistance against superior forces. Instead, he paused, glancing at the students with an unreadable expression. Instead, you have demonstrated qualities I did not anticipate. Mia Alvarez leaned forward in her seat, her elbows resting on her desk. She felt drained but alive, as though every nerve in her body was tingling with energy. You thought we'd roll over and play dead, she said, her tone sharp but controlled. That's why you underestimated us. You didn't count on us working together, thinking creatively or refusing to give up, even when things got bad. Krillax's glowing eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't argue. Instead, he turned his attention to Dr. Vasquez. Your species is intriguing, he admitted reluctantly. Perhaps my initial assessment was incomplete. Dr. Vasquez raised an eyebrow, her voice firm as she responded. Ambassador Krillax, your actions today were reckless and irresponsible. You subjected these children to psychological manipulation under the guise of education. Do you realize the consequences of what you've done? For a moment, Krillax looked taken aback. Then his expression hardened again, though it lacked its earlier arrogance. Consequences? From whom? Your primitive governments? Your fragile military forces? What can they possibly do against the might of the Zarthian Empire? It was Marcus Johnson who answered, his voice booming across the room. Maybe nothing right now, he said, standing up from his seat. But don't think for a second that we'll forget this. If you ever come back here looking down on us like we're nothing, you'll regret it. A murmur of agreement rippled through the classroom. Even the quieter students, like Lily Chun and Raj Patel, nodded firmly. They had faced one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy and survived. That knowledge changed everything. Krillax studied them for a long moment, his glowing eyes flickering with uncertainty. Finally, he spoke. Very well. I shall report my findings to the Zorthian Council. Perhaps humanity is not as insignificant as we believed. With that, his image vanished from the screen. leaving the classroom bathed in the soft hum of fluorescent lights. The silence returned, but this time it was different. It wasn't tense or uncertain, it was reflective. The students looked at each other, their faces filled with a mixture of disbelief and pride. They had just stood up to an alien ambassador, someone who represented one of the most advanced civilizations in the universe. And they had won not with weapons or technology, but with courage, teamwork, and sheer willpower. Dr. Vasquez cleared her throat, breaking the spell. "I want all of you to take a moment to process what just happened," she said gently. "What you accomplished today was extraordinary. Not because you defeated an alien, but because you proved to yourselves what humans are capable of when they work together." Mia glanced around the room, her gaze lingering on each of her classmates. Marcus, who had always been the confident athlete, now seemed humbled yet stronger than ever. Raj, the tech genius, wore a shy smile, clearly proud of the role his inventions had played in their victory. Lily, usually quiet and reserved, looked like she was ready to take on the world. And then there were the others, the ones who had doubted themselves at first, but had risen to the occasion when it mattered most. "We really did it," Mia whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "We actually stood up to him." Lily leaned over, nudging her shoulder lightly. "Yeah, thanks to you," she said with a grin. "If you hadn't figured out those patterns and kept us focused, we'd probably still be running in circles." Mia shook her head. "No way. This wasn't just me. Everyone played a part. Raj hacked the drones, Marcus led the charge, and you came up with some crazy ideas that actually worked. We did this together." Raj adjusted his glasses, a thoughtful look on his face. "Do you think he'll come back?" he asked nervously. "Krillax, I mean. Or maybe even worse, aliens." Dr. Vasquez stepped forward, her expression serious but reassuring. "It's possible," she admitted. "But if they do, they'll find that humanity isn't so easy to intimidate. Today, you showed the universe that Earth isn't just another planet waiting to be conquered. We're a species that fights back. A species that adapts, survives, and thrives." Her words resonated deeply with the students. For years, humanity had wondered what it would do if faced with extraterrestrial contact. Would they cower in fear? Would they blindly obey? Or would they stand their ground and demand respect? Thanks to this group of teenagers, the answer was clear. As the bell rang, signaling the end of class, the students began gathering their things. But none of them moved quickly. They lingered, talking quietly about what had happened and sharing theories about what might come next. Some joked about how they should write a book or make a movie about their experience. Others speculated about whether Krillax would keep his promise to report their actions to the Zorathian Council, or if he'd try to cover up his failure. Mia stayed behind, helping Dr. Vasquez tidy up the classroom. As she picked up stray pieces of paper and straightened chairs, she couldn't help but reflect on everything that had changed in just a few hours. Before today, she had been an ordinary high school student, content to blend into the background and avoid drawing attention to herself. Now, she felt like she could tackle anything life threw at her, as long as she had her friends by her side. "Dr. Vasquez," she said suddenly, turning to face her teacher, "do you think we'll ever see Krillax again?" Dr. Vasquez smiled softly, placing a reassuring hand on Mia's shoulder. "I don't know," she admitted. "But if we do, I have no doubt that you and your classmates will be ready. You've already proven that humanity doesn't back down, not to aliens, not to fear, and certainly not to anyone who tries to tell us we're weak." Mia nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude toward her teacher. Dr. Vasquez had given them more than just an unusual lesson in xenobiology. She had shown them the power of unity and resilience. And while the events of the day might fade into memory over time, the lessons they had learned would stay with them forever. Outside, The sun had fully set, casting the school grounds in shadow. Students spilled out into the parking lot, laughing and chattering excitedly about their adventure. Parents waiting in cars honked their horns impatiently, unaware of the monumental event that had just unfolded inside room 204. As Mia walked home that evening, she found herself smiling despite the exhaustion weighing down her limbs. The world felt different, now bigger, scarier, but also full of possibilities. She knew that challenges lay ahead, both personal and global. But she also knew that humanity had something special, the ability to rise above fear and uncertainty, to stand tall even when the odds seemed impossible. And in that moment, Mia realized something important. It wasn't just about defeating Krillax or surviving his simulation. It was about proving to themselves and to the universe that humans weren't just survivors. They were fighters, innovators, dreamers, and no matter what threats loomed on the horizon, they would always find a way to persevere, because that's what it meant to be human. Weeks passed and life at Lakeview High School slowly returned to its usual rhythm. The students of advanced xenobiology went back to their regular schedules, attending classes, completing assignments, and navigating the ups and downs of teenage life. But something had shifted. The events of that fateful day lingered in the air, like an unspoken promise that things would never be quite the same again. Mia Alvarez sat at her desk during lunch, picking at a sandwich she barely tasted. Around her, the cafeteria buzzed with chatter, laughter, and the occasional clatter of trays. It was hard to believe that just a few weeks ago, this same room had felt so ordinary, so disconnected from the vast mysteries of the universe. Now, every corner of the school seemed charged with possibility. Even the mundane routines of daily life carried a new weight, as though everyone knew they were part of something bigger. Lily-chan slid into the seat across from Mia, setting down her tray with a soft thud. "You okay?" she asked, tilting her head slightly. "You've been quiet all week." Mia shrugged, forcing a small smile. "I'm fine," she said. "Just thinking, I guess, about what happened with Krillax." Lily guessed, lowering her voice even though no one else was close enough to overhear. "Yeah," Mia admitted after a pause. "It's weird, you know? One minute, we're just regular kids trying to pass our classes, and the next, we're fighting off an alien invasion. It makes everything else feel small." Lily nodded thoughtfully, twirling a strand of hair around her finger. "I get it. Sometimes I think about how lucky we were. If Raj hadn't figured out how to hack those drones, or if Marcus hadn't stepped up when he did." She trailed off, shaking her head. "Things could have gone really badly. But they didn't," Mia said firmly, meeting Lily's gaze. "And that's because we worked together. We didn't give up, even when it felt impossible. That has to count for something." Before Lily could respond, Marcus Johnson plopped down beside them, his tray loaded with food. "Hey, heroes," he teased, grinning widely. "What's the topic of discussion today? Saving the world? Taking on another alien menace?" "Something like that," Mia replied dryly, rolling her eyes. But there was no real annoyance in her tone. Over the past few weeks, Marcus had become less of a rival and more of an ally, a teammate who genuinely respected her leadership. It was a change she appreciated, even if she wouldn't admit it out loud. Marcus leaned back in his chair, stretching lazily. "Honestly, I kinda miss the action," he confessed. "Don't get me wrong, I'm glad we're not getting zapped by alien weapons anymore. But it was kind of cool knowing we could handle ourselves, you know?" "It wasn't just about handling ourselves," Raj Patel chimed in, joining the group with his laptop balanced precariously on one arm. "It was about proving that humanity isn't helpless, that we can adapt, innovate, and fight back when we need to." The others nodded in agreement. For all its chaos, the simulation had taught them valuable lessons, not just about aliens, but about themselves. They had discovered strengths they didn't know they had, forged bonds that would last a lifetime, and proven that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was acting despite it. Dr. Vasquez watched the group from across the cafeteria, a faint smile playing on her lips. She had seen countless students come and go over the years, but this particular class stood out. They weren't extraordinary in the traditional sense. None of them were prodigies or destined for greatness in some obvious way. Yet, when faced with an impossible challenge, they had risen to the occasion in ways that defied expectation. As the days turned into weeks, news of the incident began to spread beyond the walls of Lakeview High. At first, it was just whispers among teachers and parents' stories about a mysterious biology lesson that had gone awry. But soon, details leaked to local media outlets, sparking widespread curiosity and debate. How had a group of high school students managed to outsmart an advanced alien ambassador? What did it mean for humanity's place in the galaxy? The attention brought both praise and criticism. Some hailed the students as heroes, symbols of human ingenuity and resilience. Others accused Dr. Vasquez of recklessness, arguing that exposing teenagers to such a dangerous situation was irresponsible. Government officials launched investigations, demanding answers about Krillax's unauthorized experiment and whether Earth should prepare for further contact with extraterrestrial civilizations. Amidst the controversy, the students found themselves thrust into the spotlight. Interviews, news articles, and public appearances became part of their daily lives. While some embraced the attention, others struggled to adjust. Mia, in particular, grew increasingly uncomfortable with being labeled a hero. To her, the real victory hadn't been defeating Krillax, it had been realizing what humanity was capable of when people worked together. One evening, Mia sat on the front steps of her house, staring up at the night sky. The stars twinkled faintly against the dark expanse, each one a reminder of the vastness beyond Earth's atmosphere. She wondered if Krillax was out there somewhere, reporting back to his people about the stubborn species he had encountered. Would the Zorathians see humans as a threat? Or would they respect the determination and unity they had witnessed? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind her. Turning, she saw Dr. Vasquez approaching, holding 2 cups of hot chocolate. "Mind if I join you?" the teacher asked warmly. "Not at all," Mia replied, scooting over to make room. She accepted the offered drink gratefully, savoring its warmth as the cool night air wrapped around her. For a while, neither of them spoke. They simply sat together, gazing up at the stars and listening to the distant hum of crickets. Finally, Dr. Vasquez broke the silence. "How are you holding up?" she asked gently. "All this attention must be overwhelming." Mia sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. "It's not easy," she admitted. "People keep calling us heroes, but I don't feel like one. We were just doing what we had to do." "That's exactly what makes you heroes," Dr. Vasquez countered softly. "True courage isn't about seeking glory or recognition. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. You and your classmates show the universe that humanity isn't defined by fear or weakness. We're defined by our ability to rise above challenges and protect one another." Mia considered this, her grip tightening slightly on the warm mug in her hands. "Do you think Krillax will come back?" she asked quietly. "I don't know," Dr. Vasquez admitted. "But if he does, or if anyone else tries to threaten Earth, they'll find that humanity is ready. Thanks to you and your classmates, the world knows that we won't back down. Not now, not ever." The words settled over Mia like a comforting blanket. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of peace. Whatever the future held, aliens, challenges, or unknown dangers, she knew that humanity would face it together. And that was enough. As the night wore on, Mia and Dr. Vasquez continued talking. sharing stories and speculating about what lay ahead. When they finally parted ways, Mia walked inside with a renewed sense of purpose. The universe was vast and unpredictable, full of wonders and threats alike. But as long as humans stood united, there was nothing they couldn't overcome, because that was the essence of humanity. Not perfection, not invincibility, but an unshakable spirit that refused to yield. And in that moment, Mia knew they had already won the greatest battle of all, the battle to believe in themselves.